For most people, Sun Tzu is a name associated with battlefields, generals, and strategy quotes shared by entrepreneurs who have never actually read him. He is often portrayed as a philosopher of victory, a mystical thinker who unlocked the psychology of conflict. But that story misses the point, because once you strip away the slogans and the mythology, something far more interesting appears. Sun Tzu was not obsessed with winning battles. He was obsessed with avoiding them. He wasn't interested in glory, honor, or domination. He was interested in cost, and in a world that was slowly bleeding itself dry through constant warfare, Sun Tzu became one of the first thinkers to make an uncomfortable truth explicit. The greatest threat to a state is not the enemy in front of it. It's the bill that comes afterward. People think The Art of War is a book about fighting. It's really a book about finance. To understand this perspective, you have to understand the world Sun Tzu lived in. His ideas didn't emerge in a vacuum. They were born in a system collapsing under the weight of its own ambition. In the 6th and 5th centuries BC, China was a landscape of fragmented states. Each believed it could unify the world. Each drained its treasury trying. War was constant. Alliances formed and collapsed. Armies grew larger with every generation. Warfare was no longer symbolic or aristocratic. It became mass mobilization. It required food, metal, logistics, taxation, and administration on a scale never seen before. States were no longer just fighting wars. They were running economic stress tests on themselves. Every time a king sent an army into the field, he was borrowing from the future, and more often than not, that debt came due. Western audiences often imagine ancient warfare as heroic and tactical, but in this era, war was logistical before it was anything else. The moment an army moved, the meter started running. Wagons, grain, horses, craftsmen, cooks, blacksmiths, porters, or why did them had to be fed or paid. Campaign lasting a few months could bankrupt a small state. A campaign lasting a year could collapse a large one, yet trapped in cycles of insecurity. These states kept fighting anyway. It was an arms race long before the modern world invented the term. This is the world Sun Tzu entered, not as a quiet philosopher, but as a strategist confronting an economic crisis disguised as a military one. Today, we romanticize him. In reality, he was closer to a risk manager. He looked at the numbers, the costs, the timelines, the logistics, and he realized that the way states were conducting war was unsustainable. Victory meant nothing if the treasury collapsed. That's why the most important line in The Art of War appears at the very beginning. War is of vital importance to the state. Not glorious, not honorable. Vital meaning dangerous, destabilizing, and capable of destroying the society it claims to protect. The rest of the book answers a single question: how do you keep war contained, controlled, and cheap? Even his most famous ideas are economic at their core. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. This isn't mysticism. It's cost avoidance. When Sun Tzu warns that no nation has ever benefited from prolonged warfare, he isn't being poetic. He's stating a fiscal reality. Time erodes capacity. Length multiplies cost. That's why he emphasizes speed, intelligence, deception, and psychological pressure, because they are cheaper than armies. Sun Tzu wasn't trying to win battles. He was trying to stop states from bankrupting themselves while trying to win battles. This was revolutionary thinking. Before him, war was driven by honor and symbolism. Cost barely entered the calculation. But as warfare scaled, that mindset became suicidal. War was no longer a stage for virtue. It was a budgetary threat. Sun Tzu stands apart because he treated war as a balance sheet, not a legend. He calculated supply chains. He understood resource depletion. He grasped opportunity cost centuries before the term existed, and he understood something leaders still forget. Every battlefield decision is ultimately a decision about national solvency. Miscalculate, and you don't just lose soldiers, you lose the state. Read this way: The Art of War stops sounding like poetry and starts sounding like accounting. Intelligence follows the same logic. One spy is cheaper than an army marching the wrong direction. Information is the least expensive weapon. Speed, too, is economic. Speed is not aggression, that's cost control. Every day an army waits, marches, and feeds itself. Money burns, delayed victory is lost. Sun Tzu wasn't anti-war, he was anti-waste. The worst mistake was fighting battles you didn't need to fight. That's why he praised generals who won through diplomacy, intimidation, and misdirection. Because when war becomes a passion instead of a liability, collapse follows. History proved him right. States collapsed not from defeat, but from exhaustion. Even winners couldn't pay the bill. Nothing has changed. Vietnam, Afghanistan, World War I. These wars weren't lost militarily, they were lost economically. Sun Tzu would have recognized the pattern instantly. Modern tools, cyber operations, sanctions, proxy conflicts follow the same logic. Maximum effect, minimum cost. Sun Tzu wouldn't recognize the technology, but he would recognize the math. The real lesson is this: Sun Tzu wasn't teaching rulers how to win wars. He was teaching them how to avoid bankruptcy. States don't fail because they lose battles. They fail because they exhaust the capital that holds them together. The best war is the one that doesn't require rebuilding the economy afterward. The Art of War is not a book about aggression. It's a book about restraint. Power isn't measured by how hard you strike, but by how long you can sustain the cost. And history is very clear. When systems collide, the winner is not the bravest but the most economically disciplined. History doesn't repeat itself, but the price is always the same. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. Because history still has answers.